All right, welcome everybody. So, hello, my name's Alyssa, and welcome to the Personality Plus session. And I'm here today to introduce our session facilitator, Freddi Dogterom. Is that what I said?
Dr.
Dr.
Yeah.
Okay. She's an award-winning and Hall of Fame presenter. Freddi speaks around the world to motivate and educate work teams, organizations, and individuals. She was recognized with a lifetime membership as a career development professional and is a master facilitator with several personality programs. A passionate learner, she accidentally qualified for a bachelor's degree in holistic health sciences just because she was interested in the courses. Her main focus these days is supporting people as they prepare for careers and lifestyle. You might spot her zooming around Lethbridge on her e-bike or zooming around the world giving virtual presentations. Please give Freddi a warm round of applause.
Hey, thanks, Lisa. All right, Zoomers, if you could turn your cameras on, that would be awesome. And if there's nobody turning their cameras on, I'm going to assume there's nobody there. So please do turn your camera on because we really want to include you as part of this presentation. Maybe not, that's okay. All right. So as we're going through this presentation, if you have questions, please feel free to ask them at the time you think of them. You can tell by the little silver threads of brilliance along the side of my head. I'm so old that if I have a question and I don't answer it or ask it, I forget completely what I wanted to ask. So if you've got a question at any time, just flag me down. Online, same thing. And if you want to put your questions in the chat, Alicia is going to be monitoring the chat. So please ask questions at any time. So today we are going to be talking about looking at ourselves from the inside out. We're going to be talking about your personality, your temperament, your way of being, the way that you connect and interact with the world. And I've got a question for you. Have you ever noticed that outside of this Zoom room and outside of this classroom, that there's people that are different than you? Ever notice there's people that are different than you? And these people, it's as if they got up in the morning with the sole purpose of aggravating you all day long. Is that correct? Yes, I know I've had that experience as well. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to take these people, pick them up by the shoulder, just give them a gentle and loving shake, straighten them out, make them a little bit more like me so that they'd be perfect. Have you ever had that desire for another person? Yes. Well, we can't do that. But what we can do is learn to understand them. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, there were a series of handouts for in-person. You've got the full version of the assessment that you're invited to complete over lunchtime or whenever. For those of you online, your assessment package came with a smaller version of the assessment that we could ship online. There is a handout for those of you that like to learn by taking notes. Here is a handout for you to take notes on. If you learn best by not taking notes, you are welcome to not take notes. And then there's a couple of information sheets just about some various elements that are important in the business world when we start looking at our personality. All right. Valentine's Day is coming next week, and I want you to think about what would be the ultimate romantic encounter. What would be the ultimate romantic encounter? What do you think?
Oh, that's a very good question.
Thank you, I practiced it.
The ultimate encounter for me is probably something warm and cozy. I don't need anything big and dramatic, but something that's like calm and down to earth.
Fantastic. All right. What about you? Ultimate romantic encounter.
I kind of like agree with that. Like I'm not a big outgoing person. This is something small, not too expensive, just like
yeah, warm and cozy. Warm and cozy. Fantastic. Well, for me, the ultimate romantic encounter would have to be a honeymoon. right? The ultimate romantic encounter has got to be a honeymoon. And my husband and I were in our 30s when we got married. And because we were in our 30s, we thought, well, we have to have something interesting to do on our honeymoon. So we decided to go skiing. Well, I had never skied in my life, whereas my husband was a very good skier. And so we decided to go on a skiing honeymoon. Oh my gosh. It was absolutely fantastic. Sort of. So we got married on a Sunday because the ski packages start on Mondays. So we got married on Sunday and flew out to DC to a beautiful ski resort, and we were going to go skiing. Well, I had never skied. And so what we decided was that I needed ski lessons. So believe it or not, I had this hottest, hunkiest Austrian ski instructor for my first 3 days of ski lessons on my honeymoon, and this was pretty cool. And it was amazing. He taught me that the hardest thing or the easiest thing to do is to fall down, and the hardest thing to do is to get up. And so we practiced. This was my first ski lesson, falling down, getting up, falling down, getting up, falling down, getting up. That was pretty cool. And then we went down over some bumps and lumps that I learned later called moguls. And so after my morning ski lesson at lunch, I met up with my brand new husband, and he says, so how was your lesson? I says, it was great. I learned to fall down, get up, and ski over moguls. He says, did your instructor know that you had never skied before? I said, oh, yeah, he knew it was my first lesson. So that was a whole bunch of fun. We enjoyed it very much, and I actually learned to ski. Had a lot of fun. And then after the honeymoon, what happens? You come home. You see, on the honeymoon, I had some expectations. And ladies, I know that not just us, but the gentlemen too, they do have expectations. You see, I had always dreamt that my honeymoon was going to be warm and cozy. And I thought that the honeymoon suite might have, this luxurious bed, maybe a fireplace, maybe some champagne and chocolates, that'd be really great. But I didn't have to tell my almost husband these things because, you see, we were in love. And I just knew that he got it. I didn't have to communicate with him because we were in love, and he could understand my wants, my needs, my wishes, and my desires. And he would know that this was my dream honeymoon suite. Well, we got to the hotel at midnight, and the front desk was closed, but there was a key on the front desk. It says for the honeymoon couple. We assumed that was us. So we picked up our key and went down to our room. And as we walked in, my heart was crushed because, you see, the reality was we had bunk beds. We did. We had bunk beds in our honeymoon. In fact, it was a little bit primitive. You see, my brand new husband of not quite 24 hours had never been on a honeymoon before, and he didn't understand my telepathy. He didn't understand that I was looking for this, king size bed and the fireplace and the champagne and the chocolates. But he had been on ski trips with the guys. And so when he heard ski trip, he thought, you go cheap, you get as many people in the room as you can, because the more money you spend on your room is less money for beer. And so he knew about ski trips. He wasn't really good at honeymoons. Well, you know what? It worked out. It worked out. It was fun, and it has made a great story. But then after the honeymoon, we had to go back home. Well, I don't know about you, but sometimes reality. And so after a trip, when you get home and you unpack, what is the first thing you do? What's the first thing you're going to do? Laundry, right? Of course, we're going to do laundry. Well, being in my 30s, I'd been doing laundry for quite a number of years, and I knew what I was doing. I was a laundry expert. And so I unpacked all of our dirty clothes, and I sorted them, right? The darks, the lights, the delicates. And so I started washing them. So I'd put a load in the washing machine, right? Wash it, pull it out, throw it in the dryer, dry it, and sort it. Well, I got to about my third load of laundry, and my brand new, hardly broken in husband came, and he literally shouted at me. He said, stop, stop. He said, you're doing it all wrong. Really? Really? Like you're telling me I'm doing laundry wrong? Come on. I says, okay, tell me how I should be doing the laundry right. That was a mistake. because that put me on this learning program where he was teaching me how to do things correctly. And 36 years later, I haven't graduated from this program yet. But you see, the issue was that I was washing his socks. Now, I don't know about you, but you take your socks, put them in the washer, right? Put them in the dryer, right? And then you take them out, and what do? Well, if you're me, you take them and you put them together like this and you fold them, right? Because you got to have your socks together in the sock drawer, otherwise they just go rogue. Well, this is where the problem is. He says, Fred, you are ruining my socks. He says, look, when you fold them like that, you wreck the top and they get all of these little ugly strings. And sure enough, there was little ugly strings. I said, okay, would you please, brand new husband, teach me how to do the laundry properly? He says, you take the socks and you count them, make sure you have an even number, and you put them into the washing machine. And then they're washed. And when you take them out to put them in the dryer, what do? Yes, oh, you guys have been on the program. So you count them when you put them into the dryer, and then they dry, and then you bring them out. What do? Yes, you got it. And then you take two socks that are identical, right? Not just two gray socks. You take two socks that are identical. And this is how he instructed me to do the laundry. He says, you take the top and you take the toe and you put it on a flat surface and you flatten them out. It's kind of like ironing your socks. And then you take the second identical sock and you hold it by the top and you hold it by the toe. And you put it on the other sock and you smooth it out. Then you take these socks and at the heel, you fold it over your index finger like that. Nice, neat. No little strings, no stretching. But wait, there's more. You then take this nice, neat sock and you put it in the sock drawer on edge, like a filing cabinet, with the heel up so you can go through. But wait, there's even more. You put them in alphabetical order by color. So now you know the proper way to manage socks. Nowadays in our house, I take the socks out of the dryer and I put them in his lap and says, here, pretend you're useful. But you see, the problem was I could never remember the number because I don't do numbers. I could never remember the number of the socks. So I was speaking in Northern Alberta one time and this lady at the back, her name was Marilyn. And she says, well, Freddie, why don't you put a whiteboard up in your laundry room and you could write the number on it? And I went, what a great idea. Now, the mistake was that my husband was with me and he heard this suggestion. So we put a whiteboard up in the laundry room. And so now I put all sorts of odd numbers, 21, 14 3/4. And, it just doesn't matter. He looks after the socks. But you see, we went from being on our honeymoon to having a problem with our socks life within 10 days. How does that happen? Well, it happens when we don't understand each other. You see, as human beings, we're amazing. We're beautiful, special, unique beings. The challenge is that we're special, wonderful, unique beings. And where a lot of problems come in work, school, life, social, relationship, is that we don't stop to appreciate and understand that other people just might look at life a little differently than we do. So we're going to talk a little bit about those differences. You see, we've been trying to figure each other out for over 2,500 years. In fact, it was Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, who started this whole ball rolling when one day he was looking in his village and he noticed that something happened, but people responded to it differently. Have you had that experience where something happens and other people respond to it differently than you do? Well, this is what happened. And so Hippocrates, being a medical person, said there has to be a reason for this. And so he started looking at it from a medical, not a psychological, but a medical perspective. And he said, there's a group of people that are just so excited about absolutely everything. He said, they are full of life. Well, he knew that blood was the fluid of life. And he said that if you are full of blood, if you've got an abundance of blood, obviously you're going to be full of life. And so he called this group the sanguine group. There was another group of people, he looked at them and he went, these are strong-willed people. They like to be in charge. They're quite a dominant personality. They could be the strong-willed child. They could be the natural leader in the playground. He says there must be a body fluid that they have that causes them to be such a strong person. And he said, I think that's their yellow bile. I have no idea what yellow bile is, but Hippocrates seemed to think that it was a strong body fluid, and that if you had an abundance of it, that you were going to be one of these strong driven people. He says, let's call this the choleric group. Now you might be looking at this language and say, well, it's all Greek to me. Well, it is, because sanguine means red blood, choleric means easily angered, which they are. And then the third group of people that Hippocrates looked at, and he went, oh my goodness, look at these guys. They are deep and introspective. They hold everything deep inside, their thoughts, their feelings. Everything is deep inside. He says, I wonder what body fluid is deep inside that is going to cause these people to be this introspective. And he says, it's their black bile. And again, I've got no idea what black bile is, but Hippocrates said it was this fluid that was deep inside the body that drove this behavior. See, this was the beginning of some of the behavioral sciences that we experience today. And so Hippocrates said if you had an abundance of this black bile, it was going to cause you to be a deep and introspective person. Well, there was one behavioral group left that when Hippocrates looked at it, he went, wow, look at these guys. They're awesome. They're calm, they're cool, they're collected, they're warm, they're caring. They're soothing to be around. And he said, there's got to be a body fluid that is soothing. And he says, yep. He says, I think these people have an abundance of the body fluid phlegm. Now I know what phlegm is. And I went, oh, that's kind of disgusting. And he said, no. Phlegm, you think about it, you get a sore throat, your body produces phlegm, right? And it soothes your throat. So he called this group of people the phlegmatic group. Well, this body of knowledge stood for thousands of years until the 1920s, when there was an absolute explosion. And that's when we had Carl Jung and we had Galen and we had some of these other people that started looking at Hippocrates' work and said, I want to update it a little bit. We had the Myers-Briggs type indicator created in the 1950s. We had Dr. David Kiersey taking a look at personalities in the education system. So there's been a complete explosion, but right now today, we're going to go back to the basics. We're going to look at the Hippocratic model. In Canada today, there's over 350 licensed test tools and instruments that can be used for assessing, how we look at the world. You might be familiar with Myers-Briggs, MBTI, DISC, Insights, True Colors, Personality Dimensions. There's lots and lots around, but most of them have Hippocrates as a foundation. So why don't we take a little explore? And if you choose to take notes on this white handout, you're absolutely welcome to. All right. Oh, yes. When we take a look at this kind of information, it's important if we are taking this knowledge into our classroom, our workplace, etc., but especially as we go out into the world, to recognize that any of these test tools or instruments are mass market tools. Okay, and they say it's a one size fits all. Well, we're human beings. One size does not fit all, because there's a percentage of the population, around 20%, for whom these standardized test tools and instruments do not work. Okay, and so there are specialized instruments for these individuals. So this disclaimer I got from a lovely little lady lawyer. I was doing a presentation in downtown Calgary, one of the shiny buildings with really bad parking. And at the end of the presentation, there was 30 lawyers in the room. And this lovely lady lawyer comes up to me and she says, Freddi, I think you should have a disclaimer for your presentation. And I went, why would I want a disclaimer? She says, well, what if somebody misunderstands or misinterprets what you're saying? And in the back of my brain, I sort of went like, so what? It would suck to be them, right? But she had a good point. And if you get free legal advice from downtown Calgary corporate lawyer, you take it. So here's my disclaimer for today. My disclaimer says that this presentation will not train you to diagnose personality disorders. Okay, that's not going to happen. In fact, it could be harmful. Okay, it could be harmful if you tell somebody that you believe that they have a personality disorder. Try this one at home. In fact, what we're going to do is we're just going to learn to recognize some patterns, because you see, when we get up in the morning, we put us on, right? We put ourselves on and we go out to the work, and we are predictable. How many of you took the same route here today that you took every other day? Sure, we're predictable, right? We're predictable. And so people tell us about themselves by their predictability. Now, sometimes what I hear from classes is, well, I don't want to be put in a box. Well, this presentation is not to put you in a box, but what it does is help you to identify some of these predictable patterns so that then we can manage our own expectation, communication, etc., so that we can build really good relationships and effectively communicate. All right. So let's talk about who's who. At the beginning, we identified that, yes, there's some people out there that are different than us, right? We talked about these different people. And there's three areas that we can identify. The first area is, pardon me, is what do they look like? The second area is what do they sound like? And then the third area is what is their activity level? But as human beings, we all have what I like to call the beige Buick syndrome. Do you know what beige Buick syndrome is? First of all, does anybody drive a beige Buick? No. Okay, good. Marilyn did, a lady in northern Alberta. So the beige Buick syndrome goes like this. You're driving down the road, right? Minding your own business. And up ahead of you, you see a beige Buick. Well, from your life experience, you have seen beige Buicks on the road before, and you know what is going to happen. So first of all, the beige Buick is probably driven by an elderly gentleman that's more than 70 years old. Okay, this is your life experience. You know that if it's a beige Buick, it's an old guy, more than 70 years old. Not only that, he's probably wearing a hat, right? Old guy in a hat in this beige Buick. Well, you also know, as you're following this beige Buick down the road, that this old guy in the hat, he probably lives south of town on a quarter section of land. Okay, so we're getting all of these perceptions just from what we can see. And furthermore, you know that that beige Buick did not come with the optional turn signal indicators installed, right? So the old guy in the hat driving the beige Buick from a farm south of town doesn't use a signal light. And so you know, based on your life experience, that he's a bad driver, and no matter what, you've got to pass this car. You have got to pass this car. So all of a sudden, what you've seen, right, married to your life experience is going to drive your behavior. And so whether it's rain, snow, uphill, downhill, dangerous curve, or whatever, boy, you got to overtake that beige Buick. You see, this is how it works. We see what's going on. We look at these predictable patterns. We make our own assumptions based on our life experience. Sometimes we're right, but oftentimes we're terribly, terribly wrong. Have you ever met somebody or seen somebody, and from a distance you look at them and you go like, oh yeah, there's trouble. Have you done that? Sure. Is that fair to the individual? No, but that's what we do because we're human. Okay, so what we want to do is to understand some of these patterns. So some of the visual cues are basically, what do you see? What do you see with this individual? What clothing are they wearing? What gestures are they using? What kind of mannerisms do they have, and how do they use their physical space? So let's unpack this a little bit. Clothing. we have style preferences, right? Sometimes we wear what's trendy, sometimes we wear what's comfy. But our clothing can really give a big clue as to which of these quadrants our behavioral preference comes from. I have an aunt who's one of these wild and crazy artists. She is absolutely amazing. And she can just go and rake the backyard and pick up sticks and pine cones and make all sorts of amazing things. She's also a master potter. She does wonderful, wonderful work, but she wears weird clothes. Like she will wear that pink plaid skirt with the, the green and red polka dot top and look good. I mean, I'd wear it and I would look like a psychedelic mushroom. And so one day I went to visit her and I was knocking on her door and there's a bit of smoke coming out from under the door. And I went, oh, gee, what's Aunt Dora doing now? So finally she came to the door. Oh, she says, come on in. She says, you're not going to believe what's happening. Because for her, everything was exciting. Like, oh my gosh, look what's happening. I've almost burned down the kitchen. I'm going like, oh my gosh, what's new here? Well, what she had was her blender sitting on the counter and she was pushing it, and it was starting to smoke from underneath. You're going like, oh, this isn't a good sign. Well, she was making paper. She had been down to the park and picked some bark off a yew tree. Yes, in a public park. She was stripping bark off a tree and she brought it home, put it with some water in her blender, and she was making this pulp because she wanted to make some handmade paper. Going like, oh, goodness sake. I says, well, Auntie Dora, I'm here to save you from the paper. Let's go for lunch. No problem, she says. I'll just go get changed. So out came the pink plaid, the polka dots, and the wackiest jewelry. And I'm looking at her jewelry and going like, that is so cool and funky, because she was always wearing cool and funky stuff. And I looked a little closer at a necklace and I went, that's pretty interesting, Auntie Dora. Tell me about your necklace. Oh, she says, I had some chicken the other day. She says, and I looked at the bones and they looked so cool. So she painted and put glitter on the chicken bones and some dental floss, and she made herself this amazing necklace. And it actually looked good. I'm thinking, you're wearing chicken bones around your neck and I'm taking you for lunch. And she says, but wait, I made one for you. She says, look at this. He says, I made this fantastic necklace for you. And I thought, well, that's kind of pretty, actually. And there's earrings to match. And in southern Alberta, I'd end up in Tabor if I wore the earrings out. But I took a look and it's made out of a coconut shell. So here she had main course chicken bones and I had dessert coconut shells. And we went out for lunch and it was quite lovely. But as soon as you look at Auntie Dora, even from a distance, you know that you can expect strange and unusual things from her just because of how she dresses. So when we take a look at people, what they wear can be a big indicator. A friend of mine is a bank manager. And bank managers, they kind of wear that boring stuff, the navy suit and the navy tie and, the light blue or gray shirt and everything. But this guy's kind of cool because when you look at him, you always got to look at his socks, because his socks sparkle. They've got pictures on them. There's all sorts of weird things going on. So when he sits, like a bank manager sits and his pants right up and you look at his funky socks. So he might wear the costume of the bank manager, but his personality is showing through his socks. Well, what about gestures? When we speak, when we talk, we communicate, it's very common for people to use their body to enhance what they are saying. It's called body language. And so we can tell by gestures, does this person speak like this all over the place? Or does this person speak so you never see their armpits? Or do they speak with their hands absolutely by their side? Or are they tapping their head? Are they tapping their heart? We can get a really good clue as to who's who by how people use their hands. And mannerisms, same thing. Do they have a very closed position? Do they come right up close into your space? Hi, Alicia, always ask before you touch somebody. But some people are just like right up there close and personal. And then, of course, the physical space. I remember one time I was watching, because I'm a people watcher, right? I like to watch people because that's where you get good stories. And these two people were talking, and the one kept walking ahead and the other one kept walking back, walking ahead, walking back. Pretty soon the one individual was like literally plastered up against the wall and the other person was right in their face. And so taking a look at how people use their physical space can also be very instructive. Is it making sense so far? Are you starting to picture people in your life? Oh yeah, all right, fantastic. Okay, the other thing to look at or listen for is, what are you hearing? Okay, what are you hearing? Because again, we bring ourselves to our communication and communication style. For example, the tone of voice. You know, some people have just this beautiful, soft, wonderful way of speaking. And other people are high pitched and staccato, and you just know they are going to blow out of their shoes at any moment, right? So your tone of voice. Have you ever had that person speak to you in a tone of voice that right off the bat, they annoy you? Right? You're like, I don't care what you're saying, how you're saying it is really making me angry, right? So tone of voice can be very important as well, and the volume. There are people, and you might notice this if you've been around small children at all, there are people that are born with their volume cranked to number 10. And there's others who have their volume very, very soft, very, very soft. I remember one time when we were dating, my husband and I were at a restaurant, and I thought my job was to entertain him because he's an accountant and he's not that exciting. And so I was telling him stories, and he's sitting going like, shh, Fred, shh, not so loud. Shh, quiet. He says, those people can hear you. And I looked at those people and they looked pretty boring too. And I thought, they probably want to hear the stories. But he was uncomfortable because of my volume. Now, in speaking to my husband in a restaurant or a public place, what happens is I can't hear him because he speaks quieter, quieter, quieter. You see, we are two very different people. The language that we use. Do you use precise technical language? Do you like to use slang? Do you make your own language up? Do you use emotional words? For example, I feel that we should go for lunch. Or, I think we should go for lunch. The other way, we'll be out to lunch. But language matters. And we choose words that give an indication as to who is who. And laughter. There are people that can have a knee slapping, belly jiggling laugh, and it sounds like this. And you're going like, well, I thought you thought that was funny. And they go like, oh, I'm laughing. Going like, not really. And then there's other people. My friend Karen is like this. It sounds like you've kicked a mule, honest to goodness. Even I get embarrassed when Karen starts laughing because she's snorting and guffawing, and it's quite the event. So you see, listen for these clues, and we can get an indication as to what this person is like. We also want to look at an activity level. What are they doing? What are they doing? Are they a very still person? A person that's really quite still, and they only move when necessary. Okay? Activity level. Are they a person that is like ants in their pants? They cannot sit still. They're jumping up from their desk. They're running here. They're just never, ever still. We like to go on trips with my brother and his wife, and he calls me squirrel, because if we're going along, they walk way slower than I do, and they're walking along, they're looking in windows, they're looking at trees, and I'm over here, I'm looking at this, and I'm over here, and I'm looking at that, and then I come back and I report, and like, you guys are missing all this really cool stuff. That's an indication of who I am, and I'm not like them. Okay, so activity level. What about playing with others? There are people, and years ago I worked with a fellow by the name of Dave. His name is Dave, and Dave could never be alone. He needed to have at least one other person with him. He absolutely loved to be around people, and being solitary for him was just the worst thing in the world. He always needed to have at least one other, preferably 2 or 3 other people. And so teamwork and working with teams was really good for somebody like Dave. Other people find, quite frankly, that humans just get in the way, and they would much rather work on their own, which is perfectly fine because they're capable, intelligent people, and they can do very good work on their own. But a team environment is not great for these people because the other people just sort of get in the way. But a big clue when you're in the workplace, even in a classroom, take a look at somebody's workspace. And whether it's a cubicle, whether it's an open configuration, whether it's a home office, you take a look. There are workspaces that people have the name tag and the trash and trinkets and everything from every conference they've ever been to. And they've got fun things. They got the little porcupine toys, and it's just an absolute chaotic, colorful disaster. Right away, you get a clue as to what kind of a person that is. There's other people that have everything organized. I work with a guy that collected mechanical pencils. Everybody needs a hobby. I'm not being critical, but he collected mechanical pencils, and he had built this little wooden display case with all these mechanical pencils on it. And one day I was running by his cubicle, and I needed a pencil, so I just grabbed one. I wrote my note and I put it back, what I thought was properly. Well, it took him less than a nanosecond to realize that somebody had touched his stuff. And I didn't realize, but all of these pencils had brand new lead in them. And when I used it, the one lead was a little, I destroyed his collection. It was really, really quite awful. Went to an office one time where everything was really tidy, right? There was one piece of paper. We were there to sign contracts. The contract was on the desk. Everything was clear. The credenza had, like 2 books on it, and it had a nicely framed picture of a family sitting on the back credenza. And so silence isn't my natural gift. So I had to make conversation with this guy. And so I'm looking around. There was nothing to talk about in his office. And then I noticed the picture sitting on the credenza, and I said, "Oh, what an attractive family." And he looks at me kind of bewildered, and he goes, "What are you talking about?" I says, "Well, that picture on your credenza is what an attractive family." He goes, "I have no idea who those people are." I said, "Oh," he says, "my staff gave me the picture frame, and this is the picture that was in it." So I don't know if it was the Walmart family or who they were. I'm going like, wow, how amazing that it meant so little to you. You couldn't even put your own family picture in. So you can get some pretty good clues about people. And by the way, he was a nice, wonderful guy, had a great family, loved his family. It's just that he didn't care about little things in his office space, like having his own family in the picture on his credenza. So the activity levels can give us some pretty good clues as well. Well, basically with humans, for many of us, what you see is what you get. And what I'm going to do is just unpack a little bit about some of the behavioral elements of our 4 quadrants. Now, this is not black and white, because as humans, we are we're sneaky. We are endlessly complex. And just so that you know, I'm not here to paint you into a corner of the porch. And you will probably identify that, oh yeah, I behave like this, and sometimes like this, and sometimes like that, which is normal for humans. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk in just broad brush strokes, more often than not, which is your preferred behavioral style. So let's start with the sanguine group. This is the red blood group that Hippocrates identified. And we can identify them because they're the ones that want to wear the bright colored clothing. They want to have the sparkles. They want to be noticed. That is their driving force in life. They want to be noticed. They also have way more energy than one person should have. I often say they were wired for 220 in a 110 world. And these are the kids that are hyperactive, and they turn into hyperactive adults. There's nothing wrong with them. This is how they were wired. So they've got a very high activity level, and they're absolutely impetuous. They don't think before they act. They're the ones that act and we're like, whoa, is that a bad idea? But man, we have fun. And what you're going to hear them say is things like, hey, are we having fun yet? Have you ever heard that? Well, that's a big clue when you're looking at the popular sanguine. And they're completely emotionally driven. What does that look like? Okay, so I get up in the morning and I go in the shower and I'm thinking morning. Okay, I'm a morning person. La, 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 I'm happy it's morning. But you know what? My husband had used the last of the shampoo. So, girl, I got to use the soap on my hair. Now I'm kind of cranky, but I get out and I blow it dry and like, hey, I'm having a good hair day. Whoop, I'm back up there again. I go and stick on a pair of tights. Man, I shoved my thumb through it. Now I'm sad and depressed. So I have 5 emotional crises just before I go to work. So you see, the popular sanguine, they're completely emotionally driven, and you never know if they're going to be flying or crying. But it is normal and natural for them. Their exact opposite is our perfect melancholy. These are the people who are very conservative. So with Hippocrates, these are the folks that were the deep and introspective people. You see, they're very conservative. They're the folks that you're going to see wearing the muted colors, right? They're going to be wearing the correct attire for whatever environment. Things like the browns and the grays and the beiges, this is what you're going to see. You're probably going to see them tucked in and buttoned up. See, my husband is one of these people, and we were at a conference one time, and it was one of these big ballrooms. And you've been in a ballroom, right? It's got the wainscoting, the chair rail, and then usually some very boring wallpaper on top. It was a women's conference. There's 150 women, one man, and I couldn't find him. He's 6'7", just so you know. I couldn't find him. And then I looked, and here he was. He was standing next to the wall, and he blended in. It was just like a moth on a tree. His pants were the same color, his belt matched the chair rail, and he had a beige shirt on. Well, of course, I start to laugh loudly and point, and I said, I couldn't see you. This is the perfect disguise. It became his favorite outfit. You're going to see that they're very tidy and organized, a place for everything in their place. They are not going to have chaos in their office. They are going to be very well organized, and they are going to make lists. Who here makes lists? Who makes lists? Who makes lists of the list that you should make lists of? Yeah, you know what my husband does? He makes a list of the things that he should be making lists for. And I'm going like, this is a little extreme, but he is very extreme when it comes to this behavioral style. Actually, when we were dating, I don't know, if you go out with a guy like this, I'd love to hear from you, because I've never heard of this before. He had an Excel spreadsheet. And on the spreadsheet, he had all of the qualities that he was looking for in a wife. Okay. And so we would go out, and apparently, I only found this out later, but apparently at the end of the day, he'd go and check his spreadsheet. Yeah, she did this. Yeah, she did that. Yeah. And so once I got all of my check marks, then he proposed. Like seriously, I married a spreadsheet. But, that was how he did things. But you see, these people want everything to be perfect. And they work really hard, because if things aren't perfect, they're easily depressed and saddened. So when we're in the environment of these kinds of people, it's like my friend with the mechanical pencils. He was very much like this. He was very sad and depressed that I touched and used his pencil, because everything has to be perfect. And that's their preferred way of being. So you've got your high energy out there, notice me, are we having fun yet? And you're very conservative, let's be organized, let's make everything perfect. Oftentimes these two people develop friendships, relationships, and there's a lot of people that are in permanent relationships that are at these opposite ends of the spectrum. These two are the easiest to identify. And then we come to the powerful choleric. Now, the powerful choleric sometimes is harder to identify because they can be a little chameleon-like. But oftentimes what you're going to see is the power colors. You're going to see the red and black combo, the navy and black combo. You're going to see, depending on what's fashionable, you might see the yellow and gray combo. But you're going to see a strong color somewhere in their attire, most likely. They love to be in control. I do a lot of presentations for women's groups, and oftentimes they take place in the church basement, right? Because in a small community, where what space can you get for free, you can get the church basement. And there's always a lady with the keys, right? You got to go to Martha with the keys. And, because Martha loves to be in control, and she's got her black blazer and her red blouse, and she looks really good. And she comes to Martha and says, yes, I have the keys, because she loves to be in charge, loves to be in control. And they are so good in emergencies. They are really good because, you see, they don't let their emotions get in the way. They deal with the facts, just the facts, Jack. In fact, a lot of people that are in emergency services, firefighters, police officers, ER personnel, come from this quadrant because this is where they excel. They're very, very good technically, and they don't let that emotional stuff get in the way, and they're really good at being in charge. See, this works for children as well. This works for little kids as well. My oldest grandson, when he was born, he came into the world and just looking at this kid and the way he behaved, hours old, and he was plotting how he could run the hospital, right? He just was. And you could never snuggle him. He wanted to be looking out. He wanted to be in charge of his environment. And being the first child, he had two parents, one kid, and he was pretty well behaved until he turned 2. And when he turned 2, all of a sudden he started behaving badly. And one day my daughter-in-law phoned me and she goes, I don't know what to do with this kid. All of a sudden he's behaving badly. He walks by the coffee table, knocks everything onto the floor, goes by the cat, steps on his tail. Like, what is wrong with this kid? And we deal with the personalities all the time in our family. And I said, what's his personality? Well, we know he's a powerful choleric. He's always been like that. Yep. I said, well, what are some of the things that he needs? Well, he needs to be in control of things. That's one of his emotional needs. And we'll talk about that. I says, great. So what's he in control of? And she goes, he's 2 years old. He's not in control of everything. And I said, bingo, that's the problem. That's the problem. So you see, whether you're 2 years old, 20, 40, 60, it doesn't matter. If this is your personality quadrant, you need to be in control of some things. And some emotional illnesses come when our emotional needs aren't met. And being in charge, being in control can be an emotional need. So what we did is we talked about it, and he was put in charge of feeding the cat. It is your job. Your job is to feed the cat. You're in control. We used the language. He didn't understand the language, but his soul knew the language. You're in control. Nobody else can feed the cat. That's your job. Fantastic. Within a week, his behavior had modified. You see, if we can meet the emotional needs of other people, that's such a strong driver in our behavior as humans. If we can meet other people's emotional needs, it's amazing. All of a sudden, the extremes of behavior fall away and they're able to come back and operate in their strength. So that Thanksgiving, they're down at my house here in Lethbridge, and he's playing with his little cars in the kitchen. I said, honey, can you pick up your cars and move them out of the kitchen, please? He goes, nope, not my job. What? He says, no, my job is to feed the cat. Technically, he was correct. And so I says, well, now you've got another job. This isn't Nanny's house. You got another job. Your job is to make sure there are no little toys in the kitchen. Fine, no more little toys in the kitchen. You see, we put him in charge, put him in control, behavior modified. Well, then there is our fourth group, which is our peaceful phlegmatic. These are the folks that are wonderful, low-key, people persons, people pleasers. And here's what you're going to see. You're going to see them in the comfy clothes. You're going to see them in the sweaters, the elastic waistband, yoga pants. Oh, yoga pants. And, the last 2 years with Zoom classes, pajama pants, wow, comfy. But what you're going to see is the soft pastels and the soft colors, the soft, comfortable clothing, because that's what they like. They just like to be low-key and comfortable. You're also going to see that these folks have a lower level of energy. Now, sometimes people interpret that to mean that they're lazy. That's not what it means. It just means that they didn't come wired for 220. They got like a AA battery, right? But these people, they have drive, they have ambition, they can do great work. It's just that their level of, hi, come on in. Their level of engagement, their energy is at a very low level. And they're totally relaxed and laid back. These are the people that just do not get excited about anything. Do you want to just hand the hook? Thanks, Alicia. And so what you're going to see is that these folks are just going to laugh. When life goes wrong, they're going to go like, oh, well, what are you going to do? But they're the ones that are going to use the feeling language. Like, I feel that we should go for lunch, or let's connect. Can we talk? And they are such wonderful, great, good friends. My youngest sister is like this. And even as a baby, we had to pinch her to wake her up to play with her because she was just so completely laconic and laid back. And she still is to this day. But you're also going to see that these folks are uncomfortable with conflict. And that part of the human experience is conflict. But these people are not comfortable with it. And they're the natural peacemakers. They're the ones that are going to say things like, well, Alicia, take 2 steps this way, and Sam, take 2 steps. Let's have harmony. These folks are drawn to occupations in human services. They work well as counselors. These are the ECS teachers and workers because they just like to work with folks and make them happy and to feel good, and they excel at that. So this is some of the main drivers. All right. So let's take a look at challenges. And again, because we're human, nothing is always sunshine and roses. So what are some of the struggles that we have? Well, our popular sanguine, they're very vocal and they love to talk, and they're really good at interrupting other people because their brain works so fast. It's sort of, you ever made popcorn and forgot to put the lid on? Okay, well, that's what it's like in the brain of one of these popular sanguines. I mean, just the ideas and everything. So they're really good at interrupting other people. They also are good at volunteering and overcommitting. I was speaking in one of these church basements, and I said, at the break, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, this lady in this hot pink top with hot pink yoga pants jumps up in the front. She goes, "Oh my gosh," and she runs out. I'm going like, what did I say? What did I do? Well, it turns out she had volunteered to make the coffee, and she'd completely forgotten because she had volunteered for many other things. So popular sanguines, one of the challenges they have is they also overcommit. And so popular sanguine, if this is you, you need to have somebody that's a buddy that's going to remind you, right? Thank goodness we've got these phones now that we can put notifications on. That's really, really helpful. And you know what? They laugh everything off. You're like, okay, so what? So what? We didn't have coffee. Big deal. And some of the other people, for example, like our perfect melancholies, were very, very serious. You're going to go, well, we had promised people coffee, and it is wrong to not have coffee. And so you're a bad volunteer because you didn't make the coffee. You see, terminal seriousness can really be an impediment to building relationships and getting ahead in the workplace as well. So the perfect melancholy can be very, very serious. They live and die by schedules. A friend of mine, funny enough, was on a honeymoon with her husband, and they were at a seaside resort, and they were walking along, and she decided she wanted ice cream. She says, "Oh, honey, let's look at, there's ice cream. Let's go get ice cream." He goes, "No, we don't have time for ice cream. It's only 2 hours till dinner, and I didn't schedule an ice cream break into today." I'm going like, oh man, and you're still married. Hard to imagine. But they're very, very serious. They live by schedule, and also, one of the challenges that they have is they take everything personally, right? Don't take everything personally, because sometimes it's just a broad observation. It's not a direct attack. Our powerful cholerics, they know everything. Just ask them. They know everything about everything there is to know everything about. And they are really good at giving unwanted advice. A friend of ours by the name of Jim is one of these people. And first of all, he interrupts all the time, but he knows absolutely everything. And you start and say, I had this amazing experience at the university. Oh, well, let me tell you about the university. It's founded by so-and-so, frankly, right? And going like, I don't really care, Jim. I don't care what you know. I just wanted to tell you about my experience. And also, they can be very intimidating. These are the people that, not on purpose, but by dint of who they are, they walk heavy. Have you heard a heavy walker? Like T-Rex coming down the hallway. And that can be intimidating, just their presence. And our peaceful phlegmatics, they're so good at procrastinating. They say, oh, yes, of course I'll do it, because they want you to feel good and to like them, right? But they're really good at procrastinating. My son's like this. When he was a teenager, he had a little cockatiel, cute little bird. And when a child gets a pet, what do the parents say? Yes, you can have a pet if you take care of it. That's absolutely right. So that was the rule. So I came home from work one day, and this poor little bird, there's all sorts of poopies in the bottom of the cage. And I says, "Hey, Chris, you going to clean the cage?" "Yes, absolutely, Mom. As soon as I do my homework." Well, what parent is going to say, "Don't do your homework, clean the bird cage"? So a few days later, I noticed him by now, the poor little birdie's ankle deep. And I go, "Hey, Chris, you going to clean the bird cage?" "Yep, as soon as I get my homework done." 10 days later, guess who cleaned the bird cage? Yes, absolutely. But they're very good at procrastinating, and they don't like to make choices, right? So if I say, "Let's go for lunch," and you say, "Oh, sure," and say, "Where do you want to go?" "Well, where do you want to go?" "Well, do you want Chinese? You want Mexican?" "Oh, I don't care. What do you want?" Right? And it can be frustrating. Sometimes you just need to make a decision. And surprisingly, these wonderful lovely people that are so kind and caring, they throw zingers at you. They can have a very sarcastic humor. So what are our natural strengths? Because we do have things that we are good at. Our popular sanguines, they are magnetic. You like being around them. They are just fun and a little bit dangerous to hang around. So they're magnetic. They are great storytellers, and they never let the truth stand in the way of a good story. Now, I'm not saying they lie, but I'm saying that if it was actually 1 kilometer, it might have been 10 uphills both way in snow, if you know what I mean. And they're charming and witty, and they are always engaging. So that's kind of fun to be around. Our perfect melancholy, they function very well alone. Give them the job, get out of their way, because they function very well alone. They're very knowledgeable, but you have to ask a series of questions to get the knowledge from them, because they don't spontaneously share their knowledge with you, right? Because remember, these are the people that are deep and introspective, and they want everything done perfectly. These are the folks that will work 24 hours a day just to get that chart or graph or project done perfectly. So you know you're going to get very high quality work from them. Our powerful cholerics, they're born leaders. Now, what's a leader? I know there's another session on leadership, but to be a good leader, you should also be a great follower. And these aren't necessarily the best followers in the world, but they excel at being in charge, leading projects. They're very decisive. You know, you give them a series of pieces of information, and then boom, they make a decision. You go like, how did you do that? You know, did you think of this? Did you think of that? Oh yeah, I thought of it all. Because you see, their brains never shut off. They're going all the time, crank, 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 going all the time. So they're very decisive, and they oftentimes have the right answer. Yeah. And they're very quick and active. They don't dither or dawdle. Whereas our peaceful phlegmatics, these are the perfect team players. These are the perfect person to be at the front line, to engage with the public, because they genuinely, truly love people, and they're nice, and they're easygoing, and they're flexible and adaptable, and they're mellow. You see, they don't have the big peaks and valleys of emotions. It's just more like the gentle ripples on a lake. So let's talk about the emotional needs. And there is a handout that I've shared with you that talks about the emotional needs. This is the only way we can have any kind of influence on a person's behavior. You see, if our emotional needs are being met, we don't need to go to the extremes of our behavior. And we all have the capacity to go to our extremes. So let's take our popular sanguine. We know these people are vivacious and they're outgoing, usually highly extroverted. What do they need? Well, they need attention, affection, and approval. And you think, are those emotional needs? That doesn't sound touchy-feely. But these are what they need to make their heart happy. They need attention, affection, appropriate touch, as well as approval, right? So they need that constant influx of feedback. If we take a look at our perfect melancholy, whoa, so different. They need space to be alone. They need silence with no people around them. And they need support when they're down. So these are emotional needs, but they're completely opposite. When I got married to the accountant, the perfect melancholy accountant that really isn't all that exciting and dated me on a spreadsheet, I thought it was my job to entertain him because he's an accountant. We all know that. Sorry, management students, but you know, accountants are really kind of boring people. And so it was my job to entertain him. And so when he came home from work, I would tell him stories and, you know, try to jolly him up and everything to, you know, get some life into this accountant. Well, I noticed one day that he was starting to come home a little later and a little later. And one day I looked out the window and I heard his vehicle in the driveway, and he gets out and he leans against it and he sort of goes like, and in my mind, I'm going like, he's going, I have to face her now. And he came in the house and, you know, I did my thing, but I started thinking, which was amazing for me. But I started thinking, you know, like, what are his emotional needs? They're different from mine. I teach this stuff, maybe I should live it. So the next day when he came home, I said, "Hi, honey, good to see you." That's all I said. I just about chewed my tongue out of my head, but that was all I said. And he looked at me a little funny. We had a pleasant evening. Well, this carried on for a while. About day 4, he came home about half an hour earlier, and he walked in the house, and I said, "Hi, honey, good to see you." Didn't say anything else. Went and put his things away and came back, and he goes, "Are you okay?" I went, "Yeah, I'm fine." He says, "Like, have you been to the doctor or something? Like, seriously, are you okay?" I said, "Yes, I'm absolutely fine." He says, "Well, why are you acting so weird?" I said, "Well, I'm not acting weird. What I'm trying to do is respect you have different emotional needs than I do. And it's not my job to entertain you when you come home. It's my job to give you the space and the silence and the time that you need to get out of your work head and get into family head." He goes, "Wow, that's really good. I appreciate it." About a week goes by and he comes home, slams the door, runs into the house, and he grabs me, throws me over his knee. "Hi, honey, I'm home." I'm like, "Wow, have you been to the doctor?" And I said, "I like this. What's going on?" He says, "Well, I appreciate you respecting my emotional needs." He says, "And I thought I would try to meet yours." It only happened once, but it was cool. It was cool. And so we have to really look at the emotional needs of people so that we can help them to be their best. Because if our emotional needs aren't being met, we have to go to the extremes, the ups and the downs of our behavioral styles to try to get our needs met. Now look at our powerful choleric, another set of emotional needs. They need loyalty. Loyalty from the troops, loyalty from the people that are around them. They need to have that sense of control. Years ago, I worked with a lovely lady named Mildred, who was powerful choleric, but she had no control in her life. She had an unfortunate life circumstance, but she was in charge of the stock room. And we had to, this is back when we used pencils, and she would measure. Our pencil had to be 2 inches long before we got a new pencil. And we had to take, and she would measure because she was in control of that stock room. You see, she was trying to get her emotional needs met. And also, we need to give them credit for their good work. If somebody else takes credit for the amazing work that a powerful choleric does, it will send them into an emotional tailspin. So our emotional needs are very important. And what about our peaceful phlegmatic? What they need that peaceful, warm, loving, harmonious environment. They need peace and quiet, lack of stress. And they need to be true to themselves, that respect for self. They need to be able to be authentic in their environment. So when we see somebody that is what we call out of esteem, or they're behaving in a way that isn't necessarily good for them, take a look. Are their emotional needs being met? Because that's how we can influence. We can never change anybody, but we can influence behavior. And this works remarkably well in interpersonal relationships, spouse or partner, parenting. It works exceptionally well. Well, in our organizations, there are room for everybody. And as you go out into that work world, you are going to find that there are an amazing eclectic group of people out there that will be your work colleagues. And some of them you're going to have instant affinity for, and some of them it's going to take work to develop a relationship because we're humans. You see, our popular sanguine is great. They're creative, they're enthusiastic. These people start projects. But then they get bored and they have to go start another project. These people are not in there for the long haul. Don't expect them to finish anything because that's not their gift. All right, but they are great at starting it. And they're great at ensuring that everybody has fun. But then we've got our perfect melancholy, who organizationally is great at the planning and the detail, right? Because they want everything perfect. So these are the people that'll do the charts, the graph, the spreadsheet. You make sure the financial records are in order, and they will ensure that everybody sees the goal. You see, they are in it for the long haul, but they're not a starter. Right, we've got our popular sanguines doing the start. Our perfect melancholy boy, they are there. They do the grunt work. Our powerful choleric are very good at motivating and ensuring that there's productivity and seeing that everybody sees the big picture. Right, that long range goal, because we've got to have everybody. And of course, our peaceful phlegmatic, they're calm and they're functional. When everybody else is running around like headless chicken, these are the groups, okay, everybody, let's just hold hands saying kumbaya, tomorrow's a new day. And we need everybody, but organizationally, you're going to see all of these behaviors in some iteration or other. So let's just wrap up quickly because I know you want to go for, I think you want to go for lunch and I feel it's just about time, right? There we go. So here's your lessons for today. Examine yourself. Examine yourself and ask yourself, am I being authentically me? Right? Because here's the thing, there's no good or bad personality. There's no right or wrong. It's not gender driven. It's not ethnically driven. It is incorporated into our DNA. In fact, in 2001, when they did the Human Genome Project, they did find that we do have a DNA strand that affects our personality. So we can't help it. We're born that way. But behaviorally, we have choices as well. So know yourself. Yes, ma'am.
How can you tell when you're being authentic to yourself, and what are some indicators of when you're not?
Have you ever bought shoes?
Yes, I have watched it.
Okay. Have you ever bought shoes that don't fit?
Yes.
And it feels awkward and they pinch your toes and you sort of walk weird because your shoes aren't fitting? When you feel like that about yourself in an environment, you're not being authentic. Right? But when there's flow, okay, was it Michaela Chichen, got a really long, funny name, but he talks about flow. And when it's working for you, right, you can feel it. It's like those comfy shoes, you put them on the first time, right? So if you can go, feels good, you're probably being authentic. If you feel like you're wearing somebody else's shoes, you're probably not. Does that answer your question? That was a very good question. Secondly, check your own compulsion. It's kind of like my husband with his socks, right? A strength taken to an extreme, right? So being organized and having, healthy socks is good, but it's your behavior being taken to the extreme, right? That's when we know that we're out of esteem or we're not being authentic, if we have to go to that extreme. Lighten up, right? Sometimes we are just so terminally serious. And if we get too serious and other people aren't comfortable being themselves around us, right? That's when we need to back up and sometimes we just have to laugh life off. Another hint is treat other people as if they are people with real feelings. Sometimes it's easy to, have those remarks or, the cutting remarks or humor, right? That really isn't. And just always think about, am I treating these other people well? Am I building their self-esteem? You see, if all of us had the life motto of we are here to build others up, I think we would have a marvelous, marvelous planet. So is what you're doing building your esteem? My sister and I used to do this. We thought at the time we thought it was funny, but it was really mean. And she would say things like, well, when you were born, the doctor slapped your mother. And I would come back with, well, you're so ugly, we had to tie a pork chop around your neck to get the dog to play with you. And we were doing this as if it was humor. But in a few years, we sat down, we had a conversation one day, and I said, Sheila, I really apologize because that isn't funny, right? Because, it's hurtful to say things like that. But we were calling it humor. So we've got to be really careful and always build other people up. If you're in a leadership role, and leadership doesn't mean on the org chart, right? Every one of us is a leader and when we wake up in the morning, we are the boss of us, right? We are the leader of us. Be a reliable leader and don't use your personality as an excuse for bad behavior. All right. Well, I'm just like that. No, not necessarily, right? Is check all of your compulsions, make sure you're not being extreme. Are you building up others? And also analyze those around you. Take a look at the people around you. And if you know yourself, that gives you the foundation to know others better. So take a look at those around you and please treat everybody fairly. Because being different doesn't make a person right or wrong. It's easy to say, oh, well, you're different than me, therefore I'm right, you're wrong. No, there's many ways of being right. And so to learn about, to understand other people and to be able to easily amend our behavior so that we can build up the others around us, that is the true power. That's true leadership. So you've got a couple of handouts, you've got the assessment tool that you can use, and I encourage you to do it and study it. If you've got a spouse or partner or significant other and you want another one to use on them, take one, okay? Because I believe this is so this information is so important that what it is going to do, it's going to allow us, it's going to set us free to have the maximum human potential that we have and allow us to build amazing relationships with others. Any questions? All right, let's close the session. And if you've got a one-on-one question, I'm here that I'd be happy to have a conversation with you after the session.